Hello and welcome to Weekly MTG, the only show coming to you from inside Wizards of the Coast, metaphorically speaking, of course, because we all still live in the void that is COVID times. But we've got some fantastic guests today. If you've been following any of the magic fiction story for Midnight Hunt, then you may recognize the names to this side over here. Yeah, we did it. I've been doing this show for 2 years, and I still have no clue on the orientations of any of this. But we are joined by Arsenault Rivera, the author of the 5 main episodes of the Midnight Hunt story, and Seanan McGuire, just below her, down there, who is the author of 2 of the side stories, one of which we've already read, and one of which is coming this week. So we're just going to spend the hour kind of hanging out and chatting with these 2 fantastic writers, learning more about their process and the stories and all that jazz. But before we do that, we got a little bit of news. So, couple things. The World Championship is coming up October 8th through 10th. And if you want to get your cheer on, you can find your champion now on magic.gg, where you can pick the player that you think is going to win the event. And then you can get some wonderful prizes on MTG Arena. So, all you got to do is check out who's competing in the event, pick the one you think you're going to win, cheer them on, and then win some prizes. And of course, this is the roster of the 16 players who will be playing in the World Championship. Paulo Vitor Damadorosa is coming back to defend his title, but he, of course, is going to have a tough time against the game's best pros, which you can see here. And then finally, before we get to chatting, I also want to call out that those who have been missing live Magic events, today Channel Fireball announced its Channel Fireball Presents Magic the Gathering Las Vegas, which is coming November 19th through 21st. They're going to have a modern main event and a Crimson Vow sealed main event as well. Both with substantial prizes. That event is going to require either proof of vaccination or a negative COVID test within, I believe it was 48 hours. So head to mtglasvegas.com for more information on that. We didn't have the fancy graphic for that because they just announced it today. But all right, now let's get to the really exciting stuff, which is talking to our 2 authors. So you might be familiar with their work on the Midnight Hunt story, but I'm going to let them talk a little bit about what else they've done and how else you might recognize them. So, Kira, let's start with you. How might people know you?
I wrote the Ascendant series, which starts with the Tiger's Daughter, continues on into Phoenix Empress, and the Warrior Moon. On top of that, I've also done some stories with Realm, notably the Shadow Files of Morgan Knox, the latter there being a 1920s eldritch horror set in a very diverse New York.
Very cool. And Shonen, where might people know you from?
So most recently, I've wrapped a 2-year run on Marvel's Spider-Gwen title. We took the character through her transition from Spider-Gwen into Ghost Spider, and then a thing happened, and comic printing was disrupted for a little while, and so a lot of the lower tier character titles got canceled, and everything is very sad. I also write a lot of books, primarily urban fantasy, and I do the Wayward Children series, which I think is currently the thing I am most known for.
All right, very cool. So, we've had other authors on here before, and they've all had varying levels of familiarity with magic when they come in. But my geek cred is well established, especially in the magic realm. I've been playing for a really long time. You two might put me to shame. So, when and where did you start playing magic, or when did you learn about it, Shannon?
So my first game of Magic was in November of 1993 at Steve Perrin's living room table when he broke out a box of Alpha and said, "Let's play with this weird thing." He was convinced it was a flash in the pan and going to go away, but it ate my entire high school and then just ate the rest of the world.
Kira, what about you?
I, alas, have not been playing quite so long. I started during Avacyn Restored, right when Dark Ascension had just come out. One of my guys in my tabletop group sent me an image of Avacyn and was like, "Hey, doesn't she look like your paladin?" I was like, "Yeah, she actually does. Let me find out some more stuff here." So I got into it through there, fell in love with the story, and I've been playing pretty consistently ever since. I actually have the Avacyn Restored set symbol as a tattoo.
Oh wow. That's commitment right there. So, okay, so you're both fans of the game. So, what was it like then, Kira, to get the call that we wanted you to write some of our stories?
I just about lost my mind. I think I woke both of my partners up in excitement, and it was funny because the email I got was like, "We would love for you to write for Magic. We would love to tell you more about it, but we're so sure that you're going to say yes to this that we want you to sign the NDA now and skip several steps." And I was like, "Yeah, sure, I could do that." I was besides myself, and then
Hmm.
it came in that it was Innistrad, and man, it was like Christmas.
All right, what about you, Shannon?
I was initially mostly confused because I work in such an I know, but I work in such an urban fantasy and modern fantasy space that there was
Hmm.
just an element of like, it's not like I go around proclaiming my fondness for this franchise on the regular. I've got it, but I don't yell about it that much.
Hmm.
Why are you calling me? Did you mean to call someone else? Oh, it's Innistrad. Okay, that explains everything. Because Innistrad is basically the setting where I would be living and dying rather horribly in a magic universe.
We
But it
all
was
would
the
be
same
dying pretty
thing.
horribly.
Oh yeah, I mean the battle cry of Innistrad is ah at a very high volume. Um, it was the same thing. They emailed and said, "We'd love to have you come and write for Magic. Why don't you write this incredibly Why don't you sign this incredibly terrifying NDA?" And
Hmm.
It's
then it took
fearsome.
my agent like,
We
"Oh, it
like our
is. I've got
secrets.
NDAs. I know. I've got NDAs with Marvel, with Lucasfilm. None of them
Hmm.
are as aggressive as this one. This is a beautiful NDA.
That makes me
It's
kind of
like
proud
the
of our
idol
legal
of
team.
NDAs. You should be." But it means my agent had to go over it very carefully before I was allowed to
Hmm.
sign it. And meanwhile, the fiction team is like, "Hey, do you actually want to do this? Because we could change our minds." And I'm going, "No, no, 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 no. My accountant says cards will become tax deductible if I do this. Please let me." That was a big motivator for my agent.
Okay, so once you signed the NDA and came into the secret cabal that is the Wizards of the Coast NDA club, what was the process like working on the story? Like what resources were you given? Yeah, where'd the process go from there, Shannon?
Well, I got an absolutely gorgeous world guide with a lot of art and updates to explain where the story of Innistrad had gone since the last time that we visited the plane. How are
Hmm.
things changing and what they wanted me to do because I was specifically being brought on for the side stories. So these are the characters we're going to have you focus on, and this is the basic goal we want you to achieve. I think it was a little bit less straight roady than it was on the main story because at the end of the day, the side stories matter a lot, but how much they matter is not always going to be evidently immediately apparent. So they
Hmm.
can kind of afford to back off a little bit more and see if you hang yourself with the rope they've just given you. So I Punnett squared some outlines and got those approved and then wrote to the outline. It's very, very strict once it's done because you can't really deviate with someone else's IP, but that's okay. I generated what I wanted to do, and my editors either said, "Yes, that sounds great," or "No, that is a terrible plan," and then put up with my questions like, "Is Ren naked inside the tree?" Which, of course, she is. Why would she bother not being
Hmm.
naked inside the tree? But it meant
They're
I made
important
my poor lore
questions.
master. Yeah, I made my poor lore master run it up the flagpole of, is Ren a naked planeswalker? Huh? Huh? Yep.
Like
You heard it
five
here
people
first.
sign off on that. Yeah.
Yep.
So your first side story that has already been published was a Ren and Seven story.
Mhm.
Uh, can your next one is being published tomorrow. Can you give the people a little preview of what it's about?
I am under the strictest NDA in human history and have not been given permission to even identify which characters it's focusing on. I will say that they are not characters that, as far as I'm aware, have appeared anywhere else in the
Hmm.
in the Midnight Hunt fiction so far, and it is a different color identity than Ren and Seven. But since I
All
don't
right.
want the snipers to come for me, that's about it.
I'm gonna have to thank our legal team. That was a fantastic answer. All right, Kira, let's go back to you. What was the process like on your end? Because you were writing the main story, which I'm sure you were given beats and like this needs to happen and this needs to happen in this order. So what was that process like for you?
You know that one meme from It's Always Sunny with Charlie and he's got like all of the stuff on the wall
Hmm.
and it's the Pepe Silva episode? It was like that because I was given the same world guide that Shannon was, which really is just beautiful, incredible. As a Magic fan,
Hmm.
it was such a treat to see it. But it was I got sent a beat sheet of things that are going to happen in the story, and I was allowed to rearrange those as I liked. So the first step was printing all of those out, cutting them out, and rearranging them into an order that I liked. Um,
Hmm.
one half in Midnight Hunt, half in Crimson Vow.
Hmm.
And what ended up happening with that is that Midnight Hunt ends up being very strongly Arlen's story, and Crimson Vow ends up being very strongly somebody else's story. Uh,
Hmm.
but that was the initial step. So just putting that document together with all of the beats in the proper order and a little bit more context given for each of them, then writing through each of the individual episodes and copy edits and revisions through that. And like Shannon said, once you've got the outline, you just write very strictly to the outline. I
Hmm.
was given a whole lot of freedom in terms of making up incidental characters and just deciding that werewolves on Innistrad, when they shift back, do not have clothes on, which gives us Arlen's little docky bag of clothing, which I thought was very cute. So, there's some discovery still as you're going through things.
All right. So same test of your NDA. So episode 4 for you just came out. It ended with the sun setting, with Arlen transforming after kind of a big werewolf battle. Give us a little preview of episode 5.
Episode 5, features a lot of stuff happening all very quickly, one after the other, and we'll get a definitive answer whether or not Innistrad's whole situation with the knight will be resolved. I will
Hmm.
say some of the story spotlight cards that have already come out are also very relevant here.
Good to know. All right, so through your process, exploring the world guide, exploring your stories, um, Kira, what were your favorite characters to write?
My favorite character to write was probably, I mean, the one that I was most excited to write was Olivia for sure. I've
Hmm.
been a huge fan of Olivia for a long time. I've had an Olivia Voldaren EDH deck for quite some time as well. But I ended up really liking Arlen a lot the more that I got to write her. And the reason for that is Arlen is a werewolf, but she's also a very non standard hero in that she's an older woman and she's also a woman of faith. And I am not that old. It was my birthday this week, but I'm not that old. And I'm also not particularly religious, but what we do have in common is I'm biracial. So my father's white and my mother's black. And that was something that I was able to express and explore through the character of Arlen, what it's like to be kind of switching between two worlds sometimes and feel kind of caught in the middle. Uh,
Hmm.
so I really became fond of her as time went on because of that.
All right. Shannon, before you answer the same question, I just want to let chat know that we are going to ask both authors whatever questions, pretty much whatever questions. Don't go crazy, chat. You would like, but if you have questions for either Kira or Shannon or both, feel free to put them in the chat, and we will start asking them kind of as we go. So, Shannon, favorite characters to write?
So I literally just realized that Kira did the werewolf center story and has cat ears and a big moon, and I did the dryad, and I'm sitting here with the entirety of the Seattle forest behind me. So Wizards totally paid to upgrade our backgrounds. That's what's going on here.
We absolutely did that.
So
Yeah.
I weirdly enjoyed writing Teferi more than I expected to. The last
Hmm.
time I had read any of the fiction with him in it, he didn't have a sense of humor yet. So finding out that he really does now was delightful, and
Hmm.
I got to do so much crash reading, which was super fun. But really, my favorite character to write, I am literally legally not allowed to say the name of. So that's a super great question to ask me. Thank you so much. I loved Ren. Ren had never appeared in fiction before, so I got
Hmm.
to set a lot of how her voice works and things like letting her trees pick their own pronouns and talking in weird proverbs from her home plane. And that was really pleasant. But I had more just sheer out, you are now living in a splatter movie fun with the character you will meet soon.
Very
I
cool.
do love dad joke to fairy.
Dad
I
joke
know,
to
it's
fairy
so
is
good.
so
Mhm.
fantastic. Yeah. Uh, so you mentioned in there, Shannon, that you obviously read some of the previous Magic stories, and I'm sure you've both read. Kira, you said that you were a fan of Magic stories since you started. Uh, what were some of your favorite Magic stories? Whether the old ones in book form or some of the newer ones in on the web.
All of mine are Innistrad related. um, I really liked the Geist of St. Chaff story. That was the first one that I ever read. So that really sucked me into the world to start with. The story that made me bawl like a little baby was the Avacyn's death story. I was emotional over that for quite
Hmm.
some time. And I also love all of the Gisa and Geralf stories as well, especially with the back and forth letters.
Hmm.
My novel, The Tiger's Daughter, is like 80% epistolary, so I was all about it.
Nice, Shannon.
So, a thing that my agent is regularly mad at me about is people will ask, "What have you read and enjoyed recently?" And I'll go, "I read," because if I'm not reading it now, I've literally forgotten it. I have rediscovered about 8 times that Kira wrote The Tiger's Daughter, which I both blurbed and loved. Like I really did. As soon as the title is said, I'm like, oh yeah, that's the book where all these things happened. And I loved it so much that I went on Twitter and was super effusive about it. But otherwise, it's just gone. All of that storage space in my head is taken up
Hmm.
by My Little Pony names, which is not super useful. But dating myself again, as if saying the word alpha had not already done so. I really loved the non-cycle novels. Like the Clayton Emery stuff was just super fun. I liked the Whispering Woods trilogy. I've more recently enjoyed. I know, but I have more recently enjoyed the Strixhaven stuff. I love Will and Rowan. I've had a good time with the school because I like a good magic school. You
Hmm.
know, that's not currently on fire.
And Shannon, you said something in there that perked up my ears and made me remember something from when we talked earlier. My Little Pony. I heard that you have the third biggest My Little Pony collection in the world.
No, North America. There are
North
larger
America,
collections than
sorry.
mine in Europe. Yep. I've always got at least one Generation 1 My Little Pony in arm's reach. This is Boysenberry Pie. And I'm allowed to show her to you because she is part of the collective IP of the company that owns Wizards, which I really
Yeah,
appreciate.
cross promotion.
Um,
We're this is yeah.
Cross promotion. Woo! These are ponies that have absolutely no marketing value in today's world because they came out 30 years ago. But they have an entire room in my house. My most recent large purchase of anything was a complete Paradise Estate, which is the single largest playset ever put out for any toy line. It takes up an entire dining room table.
Jesus.
And how do you know you're the third? That's very specific.
Because I know the people that have the first and second. And we keep track. How many ponies do you have? How many accessories? How many play sets? What's complete? What are you missing? What are you looking for? You're not allowed to count customs, which makes sense. You're not allowed to count ponies that have been rehabbed beyond a certain point. But we're nerds. We index everything.
Hmm. Yes, we do. So I've been taking some of chat's questions down to ask in a little bit, but this one is relevant right now. I don't know what I'm asking, but how does JS Field's collection compare to yours?
Okay, so JS Fields does not have nearly as large of a collection as I do because they had to purge several years ago for space reasons. They were actually at my house this past weekend. I exposed their child to Magic the Gathering for the first time, and I don't think they're my friend anymore. But they had to pick up some ponies they were storing in my house. J.S. Fields is another science fiction author. They are delightful, and we bonded by screaming at each other about Generation One My Little Ponies at a convention dealer's room about 10 minutes after we met.
All right, this is going to turn into a My Little Pony stream, but this is what the people are asking. So we're going to do a couple more of these before we get back to the magic questions. Um, how do you keep the ponies so well maintained given their age?
They have an entire room, which we are not in right now, but it has UV protective glass. It's got hardwood surfaces. Everything is set up to preserve them. Because much as people are starting to discover with their older Magic the Gathering collections, if you don't keep things in the right conditions, they will start to degrade even with no human intervention. When you're dealing with something that is 20 or 30 years old, it's not just a collection, it's an act of preservation. So you are basically setting yourself up to be the curator of a very small, very weird, kind of pointless museum. Um, so a lot of it is just knowing how to keep them. Again, like with magic cards, I have a Tyvar Kell who lives in my purse, who is in one of those little single card holders that can survive being fully submerged or hit with a hammer, because it's the only way to carry a single card without risking damage to it. And yes, I did put it in water and then hit it with a hammer with a basic land inside to test these claims.
I think Tyvar would like that.
I think so too,
Okay.
honestly.
Yeah.
I used to carry an
Uh,
Absent in my wallet.
now,
Yeah, no judgment. I've just admitted to having my emotional support planeswalker with me everywhere I go. So,
Kira, related question: do you have any collections of your own?
Aside my Magic collection, I also build Gunpla on the side. So that's Gundam robot model kits. So I do a lot of that. I have a fairly extensive Magic collection. And the other thing I've been getting into is fountain pen ink, but I'm not sure if that quite counts yet. I'm working on it though. I'll get there.
Great. All right. Well, let's get to some more chat questions because we're there. Let's do it. Yeah. Reminder: put your questions for either or both the authors in chat, and we'll start running through them. So I'm just going to go kind of in chronological order, except for the My Little Pony questions that were already asked. So this is for both of you, and we'll start with Seanan. If you could pick two characters to team up for a story, like Ren and Teferi did, who would you pick?
I am going to try and limit myself to magic there because one, I know that the IP is safe to mention, and two, that is what we're supposed to be talking about here. Honestly, Tyvar, because he is my favorite. He just wins all out for me on the Planeswalker side, and he is so much fun. And I'd like to see him get a bigger role in the fiction. So I'd go with Tyvar and Rowan Kenwraith and just have them blow a bunch of stuff up because the two of them, it would be like unleashing a horde of hyper sugared preschoolers on a Toys R Us. They would just break everything because it would be so much fun, but it would be done with the best of intentions. And they would stand in the smoldering ashes going, "We just thought this was a White Castle."
What is it you like about Tyvar?
He is just a joy. If you read the fiction about it, all of the Kaldheim fiction, the fact that he is the first planeswalker we've met that doesn't seem to have a trauma for his ignition. He didn't notice becoming a planeswalker. That implies that however it happened, it was pretty chill. But honestly, anyone who has to be informed by I've forgotten her name briefly, which Kaya, sorry, so many names. But anyone who has to be informed, dude, that thing around your neck is a Zendikari and Hedron. You're a planeswalker, and responds with, "What's that?" Like, it's just my pretty rock. I like my rock. It's a good rock. Uh, just he is the ultimate himbo. It took Magic a long time to build him, but he is now the synthesis of everything we want in that character type. And he hasn't got a malicious bone in his body. Anyone who is too, I'm not going to say stupid, because he's not. He's not. He's just not in his own head. He is so in the moment that you cannot use doubt magic on him because it doesn't work. Tyvar's just like, you want me to doubt myself? No, doubt is for people who own shirts. And that's beautiful.
I love that. That's amazing. I could hear you talk about Tyvar for the rest of the show, but I'm going to ask Kira the
My friends,
same
yeah.
question. Uh, who uh, who would you have team up for a short story? We'll stick with Magic. Two characters you could have team up for a short story.
Liliana and Chandra, free square, as they say. There were a couple of stories during the early Gatewatch period where Liliana was kind of just this terrible influence on Chandra and was just
Mm-hmm.
like her, rich aunt who wants to spoil her, encourage her to do terrible things, all of that. I want more of that energy. Liliana is my favorite planeswalker, and she is extremely malicious and malevolent, and I love that about her. So anytime I could write Liliana or really any of the black mana iconic characters, because I also really love Gisa and I would love to write Teza. There's a whole bunch of characters, but Chandra's also a lot of fun to write for similar reasons to Tyvar.
Mm-hmm.
She's kind of always in the moment, always moving ahead, and you can have her react to everything that's going around her and have her be very much like an audience surrogate in that way. Like she can point out when stuff is ridiculous, but she's not afraid of it, which is pretty fun.
Mm-hmm. All right. Next question, and Kira, will stick with you. If you were a legendary creature, what would be your creature type, and what would your colors be?
Okay, so I know you can't tell on screen, but I am only 4'9". So I think that I would end up a Kithkin at this rate. Kicking it old school, just very, very disturbing little creature. But if I got to pick color identity, I'd want to be Orzhov, I think. Get some nice black
All
white
right.
going. I'm not sure what my effect would be. Maybe I'd have Skulk or something. Kick people in the shins.
All right. Shannon.
So I think everyone in this world has one or two completely pointless tiny superpowers. They're not things that would ever make you an X-Man, but they are useless effects. I can get concert tickets to anything I want, and I can move through corn mazes completely silently without being seen. If you go into a corn maze with me, 5 seconds later, I have just disappeared. I'm just gone. So I would be green, just straight up green, because I'd need to
Mm-hmm.
have access to an ability that no longer exists, which is Forest Walk. Because if you put me in any kind of wooded environment or field full of head high corn, I'm on the other side of it already. I am improbably far away, and probably just an old school cat warrior. They were one of the
Sure.
better small attack creatures with Forest Walk, and I don't think I'd be a legendary, much as I'd like to be. I'm just on the other side of the cornfield, making your life unpleasant.
All right. Next question. We'll stick with Shannon at both authors. All the planeswalkers are running for president. Who wins your vote and why?
I mean, honestly, I know I'm a stick with Tyvar though. Anyone who wants to be president should not be president, and we've already seen from his relationship with Harold that he's not going to go for a leadership position. He doesn't want one. It gets in the way of hitting things with a sword. He's kind of busy. So now he's president of the United States, and that's going to end so badly for everyone, especially because his VP is going to basically be whoever figured out first that the shirtless himbo vote was going to carry the day. So it's probably President Tyvar and like Vice President Liliana. This is not going to end well.
Kira?
I would vote for Kaya in a heartbeat. for very similar reasons. She probably would not want the position of president and would argue if you gave it to her. But I think that once she was in the position, she'd take it very seriously. And obviously, she's very concerned with fairness and with oppression and making sure that people get their due. And I think I could dig that in a president.
All right. The next question we got, I'm actually going to answer. What is the process of Wizards bringing on authors? How involved are you in world building? How does the collaboration work out in practice? Constant communication or more room? To the person who asked that question, we actually talked about that quite a bit towards the beginning of the stream. So I would encourage you, if you tuned in late and want to know more about that, to head it was probably about 5 minutes into the stream, I would guess, that we started talking about that. But yeah, both Kira and Shannon had a lot to say about that. Next up, let's go Kira again. Favorite creature types?
Vampire, probably top. Vampire and zombie, I think I would say. My two main EDH decks right now are I've got a mono black Gisa deck. I've also got an Esper Varina deck, and I'm sorry. I play Edgar Markov. I promise it's not busted. I don't do the busted version, but I do play him though.
We forgive you. That's okay. Shannon?
I really like frogs. It is actually a little bit upsetting. I don't like them in game necessarily, but you asked for favorite creature types, not most effective creature types. And the fastest way to make me happy with you is to give me a frog card. So just frogs and turtles and alligators. I'm building a swamp over here, having a nice time with it. It's another environment I can move through very easily. Oozes are also great. I do love me a good ooze, and I'm currently trying to put together an ooze-centric deck because we've got some astonishing oozes in Innistrad. Just really good smash your stuff oozes.
How do you like the Gitrog monster? Have you accepted him as your Lord and Savior?
I was going to say, Innistrad's been very good to you.
Yes, the Gitrog monster and the Omniphibian, discovering those two was just like, this is a gift specifically to me from Wizards. Nobody else was on their mind when they did this. Just me. I know that's not true, but that is how I felt.
It might be. There are lots of reasons cards get created. Let's stick with in kind of the same space. I'm going to jump ahead to another question someone else asked, which is related. If you could add a creature type that does not currently exist in Magic, what would it be? Shannon.
It would be a long pause while my brain attempts desperately to reboot.
I was going to say that's the first you've had to actually think about one of these questions.
Yeah, no, there's also so many creature types just across the breadth of Magic. And like I said, most of my storage space is My Little Pony. So, gosh baskets.
This is tricky because everything that I'm thinking of is already a different creature type.
Exactly.
All right. Well, then we've covered everything. Good job, us.
Yeah. We are victors.
All right.
What we win is stumping the panel.
Yeah, I should look up who stumped the panel. You get a little prize. Okay, this is a question specifically for Shannon, although, Kira, if you want to answer it, you can too. Which My Little Pony character does Teferi act the most like?
Okay, wow. Y'all are just really going for blending the IPs now.
You might as well, yeah.
You might as well, I guess. So honestly, probably Gusty, because Gusty's general response to the things that all of the other ponies are doing is to look a little bit baffled and go, what? And then make terrible dad jokes. Gusty is not in for the antics. Gusty is in it to get through this quest and get back to doing what actually matters, which is generally recovering Dream Valley. As a reminder for people asking this sort of faintly malicious question in the Twitch chat, I'm a Generation 1 pony person. None of the characters I name are going to be anyone you've ever heard of, and you will have no way of verifying my answers.
And so like, I'm just nodding. I'm like, yeah, that sounds reasonable.
Checks
Sure.
out.
You could have just said something really
Yeah,
coded and terrible, and I'd have no idea. Um,
I did not.
all right. I feel like the spirit of this next question is for Shannon, but we'll ask it of both of you. Who would win in a drinking contest, Chandra or Tyvar?
The audience.
Yeah, the audience.
That is the
So
correct answer.
honestly, I know again how this is going to sound, but it would be Tyvar because his single best ability, which is not reflected on his card, is that he can transmute himself into anything he is touching and takes on some of the attributes of that thing. So as long as he's drinking out of either unworked metal or glass, he's not getting drunk. Like look at me,
Hmm.
I'm a man made of bronze. I can do this all day. Ha ha. If he thinks that's cheating, then Chandra might well be able to drink him under the table, but he lives in a land of mead halls and great boasts, so I figure he drinks a lot.
Fair
I'm
enough.
gonna go with a wild card here. I'm gonna go with a wild card here, which is I think that Tyvar is gonna be winning for the most part, right? But then it's gonna come out that he's cheating. But by that point, Chandra's already plastered, so they're about to fight, right? Nissa walks by, sees what's happening, takes Chandra's place, and she outdrinks Tyvar. Lest we
Nissa would,
forget,
in fact,
elves are
drink
stacked.
Tyvar into the floor.
Hmm.
All right, fantastic answers. Next question. This one is directly for Kira. You've been working on IP stuff for a while. Do you think you'll do original fiction again?
Yeah, I'm actually working on an original fiction project right now. The IP stuff has been an awful lot of fun, and honestly, it's been a complete dream come true. But I don't worry, I am working on more projects about messy lesbians. I've got one that I'm working on right now that it was a bit of a challenge to myself. I decided to see if I could write a true love triangle where everybody is interested in everybody else, and also they're all villain protagonists, and also it's all different kinds of enemies to lovers. And what I've discovered in writing that is that I'm incapable of putting two hot villainous women in a room without shipping them. So it's gotten very messy very quickly, but it's been a lot of fun to work on that project. And yeah, I mean, I'm still writing original fiction, and I would love to publish more of it.
All right, great. Next question is back to Magic questions, and it's for both of you. Favorite angel art in Magic? Kira, I'm going to start with you because I feel like your answer is pretty obvious.
Judge Promo Avison, easy.
All right, Shannon.
It's not the prettiest art and it's not the most popular art, but I'm going to have to go with the Sarah Angel. When I was first playing obsessively, that was straight up the card that White had that could wipe the board for it. And we
Hmm.
had fist fights at my high school over who took an angel off campus. We only have 7. How dare you trade one to someone that's not in our pool? That sort of thing. So it's definitely not the prettiest. If I had to pick the best angel, it wouldn't even be in the top 10, but it's the one that has the closest place to my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. So next question. It says more for Kira than Shannon, but you can both answer this a little differently. So we'll start with you, Kira. Did you approach the writing of Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow more like you would a horror story, or did you approach it more like a fantasy story?
See, we've got a false dichotomy here, because the right
There
answer
we go.
is that it's a gothic in both cases, especially something like Crimson Vow, which, as we'll see, Crimson Vow has, I would say, a much tighter setup in terms of location, and features a lot more of the classic gothic horror tropes. But
Hmm.
for me, gothic horror and gothic fiction have been a near and dear thing for many, many years. I love gothics. I have pretty much all of my life. So I would say I approached it more like one of those, with this idea of there's monsters, we're struggling against them. What does that struggle say about us? How do we keep the dark out? Uh, stuff like Arlen's grappling with being a monster is very reminiscent of the entire last section of Dracula, where Mina Harker has been kind of, infected with Dracula blood and is trying to
Hmm.
figure out who she is in that space. So for me, I approached it more as a gothic, I would say.
Okay. Shannon, what about you?
Given so far what you've seen is kind of the fantasy side. It is definitely gothic fantasy, but every planeswalker sort of carries their own genre with them a little bit
Hmm.
while moving together through this shared universe. And Ren is absolutely a fantasy protagonist. She is not going to be running around taking on your cyberpunk worlds or even getting too deep into the horror side of things. Um, and then later, as I watch for the snipers, you will get to see a bit more horror, which is a thing I like to do. I have a horror party coming up. Yay, lots of horror. I don't think yes, I am actively watching for I worked for Marvel for years. God, they are vicious. So
You're okay. We have ninjas. Hasbro has ninjas, not snipers. Uh,
I don't like that idea.
It's those
we
ninjutsu costs,
we've
they'll get you every time.
yeah, we've
Mm.
talked about the Hasbro ninjas for a very long time. You will not see them coming. Sorry. Next up, um, all right. So I think we've kind of touched on this in a couple different ways, but I'm gonna ask it because you know what? Chat put it out there. Which planeswalkers would you like to see do a major cameo in a short story? Maybe let's start. Let's go with a little twist and say a planeswalker you have not talked about yet. We'll start with you, Shannon.
Will, I love Rowan. She is definitely my favorite of the twins, but I feel like we don't spend enough time with Will because she is such a more dominant personality that it's
Hmm.
harder to get a grasp on him. And I'd like to see him have some time to really get that focus. I'd also really like to see us spend more time with Narset. She is super important to a lot of people and she's not getting a huge amount of spotlight. So it would be good to spend more time with her.
Hmm. All right, Kira.
Narset's a really good answer. I was going to say Elspeth, who has been probably filling out the top three of my favorite planeswalkers for quite some time. I
Hmm.
think it'd be. I'm. We don't really know what she's been up to since the whole Theros thing, so I think it would be pretty dope to see what she's been doing.
All right, great. Next question is an interesting one. Let's see. Um,
Because stump
do
us
you
again?
keep in no? Do you keep in touch with other Magic authors? We'll start with you, Kira.
Well, Sean and I have been talking pretty much once we realized that we could we could talk to each other about NDA stuff, because
Hmm.
this NDA, guys, it truly is like there are ninjas watching your every move. It's intense. So once we realized that we were both working on the project, we've started talking a bit there. It really helps to have somebody to talk to about all of this because as wonderful as writing magic is, the worst thing in the world is holding on to it and not being able to tell all of your magic playing friends what's going on.
Yep. I had one person figure out that I had to be writing magic and caused me a massive panic attack because she came to my house. I had cards all over the dining room table, which is not normal because the cats will knock them over. And she looked
Hmm.
at the cards and went, "Why do you have all of your magic cards out? We're not playing right." Oh my God, Wizards hired you. But wait, no, why would they hire you? Eldraine was last year. They would have hired you for Eldraine because you're a foe. No, they hired Mira. We're going back to Innistrad. That's what you're doing. And I'm just going, how how did you? I didn't say a word, and you did that in less than 90 seconds, and I'm going to get fired if you go put that on Twitter. So please don't. I finally leaned on our mutual lore master until she told me who was going to be doing some of the stuff around what I was doing, and then
Hmm.
pretty much messaged Kira to go, "Hey, are you working on a project that has a code name that exists in this specific part of the dictionary?" And Kira was like, "I recognize someone fighting through the woods of the NDA trying to avoid a possible violation. Why, yes, I am." And then we just started screaming at each other in all caps. Like, if I scroll
Yeah.
back to that part of our conversation, I think the first 2 days is just all caps
All caps.
and the occasional vague threat if you hurt the wrong character, or not so vague, and just yelling because we have no one else to yell at.
Yeah. Now, did you two know each other before this project?
So I wanted to touch back on something Shannon said earlier, which I don't think you've heard this story, but Shannon
I don't think I
actually
have.
blurbed my first book, The Tiger's Daughter,
Okay.
and that made my whole day. And the story here is that I remember distinctly when I got the email with the blurb because we were walking back from doing the groceries. I was checking my phone and I walked right into a crosswalk. While the traffic was going because I was just so happy. I was like so distracted by it. And like Charlie, one of my partners, had to just like yank me back and was like, "Are you okay? What's going on?" And I was like, "Sean and McGuire just blurbed my book. I'm losing my mind." So you could say I'm familiar with Shannon's work.
Fair enough.
We're not supposed to kill other authors. That's not how you get onto the
No.
bestseller list.
Well, if there's no other authors, then you get it by default, right?
Wait, is that how this
Fair.
works? I have a really big swamp for body disposal. You should come over. I cook well.
All right. That question took a dark turn. All right. Next up, another question. I don't really know what I'm asking, but I'll ask it because it seems genuine. For Shannon, if Tyvar was a pony, what would his cutie mark be?
Well, if Tyvar was a pony, because you are asking me, Tyvar would be a Generation 1 pony, where we did not call them cutie marks, because that's a Generation 4 add-on. It would just be a symbol, and Tyvar's symbol would straight up be the Kaldheim set emblem, because Tyvar does everything for the greater glory of the elves of Kaldheim, and they don't have a standalone symbol. And he would be an earth pony, because he is an elf.
All right. Fair enough. We are nearly out of questions. I have one more. So, chat, if you have any more questions for either or both of the authors, put them in chat now. And if not, we'll end up ending the stream. But here is a one last question. So I will add, I'm going to ask this question, but neither Kieran nor Shannon have advanced knowledge of things in Magic Story that they're not working on. So this will be more a kind of would you like to see it, I suppose. So Kira, we'll start with you. Do you think that we will ever see an Aetherborn Planeswalker? If so, what would ignite their spark?
You know, that's a really good question. I like the Aetherborn. I'm not sure what exactly would ignite. I mean, I think it would be a really cool thing to explore. I'd love to be in the room developing that, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure exactly where I would go with it off the top of my head. But it's something I would dig seeing for sure.
All right. Shannon?
Given that they don't live very long and they tend to go for that whole, we want to have a nice time while we're here, but they do live in families, I think if you wanted to have an ignition, you just want to find a way to wipe out an entire family of Aetherborn and leave one behind. And that would be a traumatic enough moment to cause an ignition. But again, Tyvar's my favorite because he doesn't have trauma. Maybe the ignition point really is just straight up, I want to go and see more things. I want to have more enjoyment. So I'm going to ignite so that I can go on the dumplings tour of the multiverse. And you've just got someone planeswalking from shopping zone to shopping zone so they can try all of the different variations of ramen across all the planes. That
You
would be
know,
a character I
Right.
would like to.
I think feeding off of that too, anxiety over death would be a cool way to go with that as well, where it's not necessarily a
Mhm.
trauma, but just something that they don't want to die necessarily, and they want to see as much as they can before that, and just like the horror of the idea of death. I think that would be very relatable for a lot of people who are terrified of death, not at
Yeah.
all like me.
So we've just gone to the existential crisis as Planeswalker Ignition, and I think that would be a lot of fun.
All right. We got some more questions in chat, so we're going to keep going. Shannon,
Okay.
we'll start with you. What is your favorite Magic plane besides Innistrad?
I like the laughter if we've all just figured out what her answer will consistently be to things, but actually it's Eldraine. So
Hmm.
I went to the University of California, Berkeley, go Bears, for a degree in folklore and mythology. I am straight up a folklorist. I study fairy tales for money. That is what my degree is fairy tales, myth, and folklore of that particular part of Europe that generated the March Hen and that entire tradition that Eldraine is built off of. So the idea of building a plane where that is the underpinning concept behind reality is just delightful. You know, my brother can't understand why I am not more Kaldheim is the place to be because of everything. Innistrad matches up well with a bunch of books I've written, and some of my favorite sets are there. And yeah, I've really enjoyed a lot of planes, but I've got to go with Eldraine.
All right. Kira.
For me, it's Theros, easy. Uh, I was a classics minor in college. When I wasn't reading Gothics, I was talking about Greek myth and all of the related subjects. So, I mean, it's just rad. Being able to see the gods and the whole mechanic of enchantment creatures, it's so cool. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, I would just hang around on Theros, sit by the beach, have myself some wine, kick it, it'd be fine. It's very different from living on Innistrad.
All right.
Less screaming.
Uh,
Much less.
we'll start with Shannon for this next question. If you could bring back any old card from, say, pre-onslaught, what would you bring back?
I would bring back any card that caused a bee to not have just come to say hello to me. Please leave, Akira. Please go away, bee.
Old card from pre-onslaught. I'm not sure if we're talking about like reprinting there or if we're talking about like bringing a character back in. I mean, I feel like that's tricky because we've gotten a lot of really cool cards revisiting older planes and
Mm-hmm.
older stuff recently with Dominaria and with Commander Legends. So, for instance, we just got another Jessica card, which I think is sick. So, I would say right now I'm in the wait and see boat because we've got Brothers War coming up, and it
Mm-hmm.
feels like we're going to get a lot of really cool stuff in that.
Maybe. That set comes out on my birthday. It's a little present to me.
Aw,
Nice.
happy
I know.
birthday.
Thank you. All right. The weirdest deck archetype you've ever played. Kira, we'll stick with you for a sec.
Samurai Wizard Tribal. I
Explain.
It's a Samurai Wizard Tribal Commander deck with Marquesa, Grixis Marquesa as the commander there, and the whole thing is it's based off a tabletop RPG campaign that I was in, but it's all samurai and all wizards, and it's nothing else. I've got a couple of cards in there that are meant to make all samurai wizards and make all wizards samurai, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But I think Samurai Wizard Tribal is probably the winner for me there.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
My,
Shannon?
Mine is literally no longer possible because, again, we got rid of the walk mechanics. But I used to run Children of the Corn, where it was just straight up everything with forest. Yeah, everything with forest walk that I could shove in there, and every blonde card I could find. And so I would just be sitting there laying down cards, and you look over, and I've got 20 weird blondes with forest walk coming at you. And that only worked if I was playing multiplayer with at least one opponent who played green, because I could not do jack if you didn't play green. But Children of the Corn was just joy.
All
So,
right.
do you like Flesh Taker and Midnight Hunt, like that art? Because that feels very Children of the
Oh,
Corn to me.
Flesh Taker makes me so happy. I pulled the signed art card for Flesh Taker and did a little
Oh,
dance.
nice.
It was like I had gotten a planeswalker level of this is exciting.
All right, next question. It says more for Kira, but Shannon might have an interesting take. If you wanted to take Chandra on a first date, where would you take her to really impress her?
Oh man, that's a really good question. I feel like with Chandra, the experience is more important than necessarily like what you're doing. So I feel like vibe counts for a lot there. I think I would go do something that terrifies me. Um, yeah, I mean, I feel like I would go Man, like I'm just trying to think now. Like, where would I take Chandra Nalar on a date? There's so much to go through. um, like those adult day camp situations where you've got like all the rafting and stuff like that. I feel like that sort of
Mm-hmm.
thing would be really cool. Either that or one of the escape the rooms. We have a few in New York that are like there's a bomb and it's full of paint, and if you don't solve it in time, then the paint's going to explode all over you. So I feel like that would be a fun situation too. But anything where we could get to know each other, have fun in a kind of like a higher tension situation, and where we're both kind of challenging ourselves, I think that's the way to go.
All right. Shannon?
There is an absolutely fantastic, or was pre Panini. I don't know if it's going to come back, but there's an absolutely fantastic haunted experience in central New Jersey called the Field of Screams that has 7 interlinked haunted houses. You've been to the Field of Screams. Oh my
I've
God.
heard of
7
it. I've
interlinked
heard of
haunted
it.
houses, a gigantic corn maze, a second gigantic corn maze where they have the zombie paintball, and then a haunted hayride where zombies actually try to drag you off the hayride into the barn full of giant spiders. And it probably would not impress Chandra at all, but I might get to see her burn down a barn full of giant spiders when she got freaked out by the teenagers dressed like zombies. So I'm going for maximum chaos, and that's good.
Chandra,
Oh,
are you
fantastic.
like Shannon? Are you like trying to get people to go to corn mazes? Are
So
you just trying
neither
to
of you
trick
are
us all into a corn maze?
neither of you are watching
I
chat, but there's
mean,
a whole string of comments right now where they're asking for a legendary creature card in the future to be named Shannon, Mother of the Corn.
It's good. I support it. Bring back Forest Walk just for that.
bring back Forest Walk just for that. Cannot be blocked if you control a forest.
I'll talk to some people. We'll see what we can make happen.
A terrible
They
plan.
they have all jumped on this name. They think it's a wonderful name. So there you go, Shannon, Mother
Go
of the
chat.
Corn. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in
All right.
favor.
All right. We have about 4 minutes left. Let's go with all right. Which planeswalker leaves a good tip at a restaurant, and which one doesn't leave any tip? Kira.
Uh, this is a very good question. I'm gonna go ahead and probably start some wars. I'm gonna say that Jace doesn't tip. Like, it's just something I feel in my heart. He's the guy who's arguing about how he shouldn't have to tip because society should change such that there's no need to tip. And so he doesn't want to buy into the system of tipping. And if everybody else doesn't want to, people have to buy in and follow him, or there's going to be nothing on that. I think Liliana leaves surprisingly good tips because I feel like people tend to forget that she was a healer beforehand, and I feel like she's a very extravagant person and likes flaunting that extravagance. So it feels like she might leave really good tips.
Yep. Kira kind of stole my doesn't tip answer because Jace does not tip. He doesn't. I'm going to say also Ren probably doesn't tip because she has no comprehension of the system of commerce. And going back to the drum that I just like to beat, Tyvar would tip remarkably well because he doesn't really understand that money has value. Why would it? Everything can be gold if he just wants it to. So here, thank you for my coffee. Here is a 5-pound piece of gold. I will leave now. And
Another.
he would upset local. Yeah, he would just upset local economies. Is what Tyvar would do. The economists are chasing him down, just being like, "Please stop tipping our wait staff. They are all billionaires now. You need to chill. Why will you not chill? God, do you ever chill, please?"
Okay, we're gonna end it on that question. This has been amazing. This has been amazing.
We're
Chat is
faintly
loving
feral.
all of your answers. Great questions, great answers. This was really fun. Reminder that if you want to read specifically the magic fiction by these two amazing authors, both of them are available. There you go, right at the bottom. Producer Sean right on top of it. magic.wizards.com/story. So the main episodes you'll see are written by Arsenault Rivera. And then 2 of the side stories, the second of which comes out tomorrow, are written by Seanan McGuire. The first one was the first, or now I'm forgetting the first or second episode. It's the one with Ren and Seven and Teferi. All of them are really fun reads. Definitely go check them out. Otherwise, if you want to learn more about either author, you can see their this side, yes, their Twitch handles right by their names. Or go back and watch the beginning of this stream where they talked about all the amazing things they've written in the past. So thank you to so much for joining us and for answering all the weird and wacky questions that chat had. It was fantastic and really fun. And then Weekly MTG will be back next week. So we'll see you then.